Hey Jammers, Chris here, along with Kiwi, and I'm here to talk about bluegrass rhythm guitar and how it works in a bluegrass jam, just so you can start to get your fingers around this stuff and some things to think about. The first thing I want to talk about is which chords to play. So in the Wernick method, we are playing songs almost exclusively with G, C, and D, and then an A chord is also good to know how to play in case we want to play in the key of D, which we might. And so which chord shapes to play? There's a lot of ways to play a G. They're all good, but in bluegrass, there's a specific bluegrass G that would be good to get your fingers around. It looks like this. I've got my ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. That's not my ring finger, that's my pinky finger. And then my ring finger's on the 2nd string, 3rd fret. My index finger is sort of kind of hanging out here on the 5th string, 2nd fret, and my middle finger's up here fretting the 3rd fret of the 6th string. But really, it's fretting the 3rd fret of the 6th string, but it's actually, I kind of have it angled, so it's also muting, cutting off this 5th string. So that 5th string is, my index finger is there and it's helpful, but I'm going to use it for some different things, but it's muted right now. So if I were to go through and pick these notes, it sounds like. Really good sounding G chord for bluegrass music. So if you can get your fingers around that, that's really going to serve the jam well. Compare that sound to some of these other G chords. That's kind of a folkier G. It's a little bit more colorful and it's a good sounding chord, but when you've got a lot of instruments playing, you really want to tighten up that sound a little bit. Play that bluegrass G if you can. So that would be a good thing to get your fingers around. Any C position really works. I like this one. So that's the one I'm going to talk about. My D, I'm using this D as opposed to the D7. D7 is a good chord, but it's a little bit of a specialist. So you can't use D7s in all situations that have a D chord, but you pretty much can use a D chord. And my A chord, some people like to bar it, some people like to use their individual fingers to fret the string. Some of this A7 can work, but again, anytime you see a number after a chord, it's a specialist. So it's not going to work in all situations, so there's a little bit of a nuance to using that too. For our purposes, it actually will work. Now, what to play when you're in those chords? Sort of first thing you should get to is being able to do a boom chick. This boom chick is the heartbeat of bluegrass music. Anytime you turn on a bluegrass song, the thing that makes it sound like bluegrass is boom chick, 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 that sort of thing. So all instruments have some sort of responsibility, either the boom chick or guitar. Actually, you're going to play both. So we want to get that going. And with that boom is a single bass note. With our G chord, that's going to be the 6th string. And then I'm going to strum. When I strum, I'm not going to strum the whole thing. I'm going to strum like the first 3 or 4 strings. That would be a really good thing just to get automatic so you're not having to think about it, walk around the house with your guitar and boom chuck. If you got this will serve all your purposes you'll ever need to know. Everything on top of this is just icing on the cake, and makes it sound fancier. But if you can get this going, that's great. In our C chord, that bass note that I'm going to hit is on the 5th string. That's my C note, that's my bass note, the root note of the chord. Doing my boom chuck, I want to hit that 5th string. On this D chord, the root note is on the 4th string. And a strong boom chuck. And then with this A chord, the A note is on the 5th string. Getting a strong boom chuck is a good first step, and this makes really good music. So that's a really good foundation. If you're not there already, go ahead and start practicing that up and you know, try to break that out at the jam. That's if everybody's on the same page with that. We've got a lot of guitar players, so it's going to end up for a tighter sound overall in a large group. One thing as you're doing that to keep in mind, it's a really good idea to go ahead and start to match up your foot tap. Start to get your foot tap in as you're playing. And your foot is always going to stay consistent. You don't want to move it. And see if you can match your booms along with your foot tap. So my foot, you can't see my foot, but my foot's tapping right here. And so when I'm practicing my boom chuck, I'm going to get my foot going and boom, 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 boom. If you can start to develop this ability, you start to embody the rhythm that you're hearing in the bluegrass music, and it'll help your internal sense of rhythm overall in the long run. Okay, cool. So part 2 of this video is some fancier stuff you can do with your right hand that won't detract too much from the jam. Could enhance the sound of your playing a little bit. First of all, what not to do. Try to avoid, unless you've really dug in and you've really studied some bluegrass guitar players and their rhythm styles, I would avoid any extra strumming. So sometimes, you know, guitar players will come in with some kind of a folkier thing, and that's got its place for sure. But in a bluegrass jam, it can kind of muddy the waters a little bit. Or other, you know, just other little strummy things. It would be good just to tighten it up with a nice boom chuck first and make sure that is solid as a rock, and, you know, do that for 10 years before you start adding in any extra strumming things, essentially, because the boom chuck is all we really need. Everything else is icing on the cake. However, within the boom chuck, we can kind of fancy it up just a little bit. With our right hand, we can do 6 strum. We can alternate this bass line. So after I do my boom chuck on that 6th string, I could do a boom chuck starting on that 4th string. Alternating those booms between the 6th string, 6 strum, 4 strum, 6 strum, 4 strum. On the C chord, those bass notes are in different spots, but I'm still starting on the 5th string like I was before. That's my root note. I'm always going to start with that. And I want to hit a G note as my other note. That note could be on the 3rd string, and this is my favorite way to play it. Nailing it right now, but that's there you go. Or you can move your ring finger. That's also a G note. If you move that ring finger to the 6th string like that and just kind of alternate that way, you can get a nice sound that way. Those are 2 good options for that chord. With a D chord, not a lot of options. We've got a root note on the 4th string just like before, and I'll go down to the 5th string because that's an A note, and so we want to go between a D note and an A note. And then with the A chord, we come along to an A chord. That A note is on the 5th string. And you could go down to the 6th string, or you could go up to the 4th string for your 2nd bass note. Kind of a Johnny Cash sound. Or you could go up to the 5th string, or 4th string. So that's a really nice thing to do, is those alternating bass line, and that kind of sounds like. One other kind of little bonus technique to put in there that sounds kind of cool without detracting or muddying the waters is this little thing. So I haven't been using my index finger up to this point, but one technique I like that really I feel like made my bluegrass guitar playing, rhythm playing, start to sound like I had in my head, like I was hearing in the recordings, is taking that index finger and moving it up to the 6th string, 2nd fret, and hammering in to that, doing a hammer-on my middle finger. And doing that occasionally on the boom. Not all the time, but occasionally doing that on the boom. Maybe like every other time I do that 6th string boom check. If you do this in the alternating pattern, it ends up sounding really good. It's kind of powerful. And that would apply to the G chord. I wouldn't necessarily do that all the time in any of the other chords. I would do that over the G, kind of in home bass. Yeah, so if we can all get on the same page with what our bluegrass rhythm sounds like, it'll end up for a really great sound, as we've got 15 people playing. Everything's going to be in sync and in lockstep as we're not muddying the waters. There's not a whole lot of extra stuff going on. We all know exactly what we're doing to get that bluegrassy sound. So let me know if you have any questions. Enjoy.